Chapter 18 Morning Star. Spike was pacing nervously around the room next to Starlight's workshop. He, Cranky, Maud, and Sunburst, once they had done all they could, had decided to give Starlight and the Brainiac Squad space to work and not distract them, except for an hourly status update and coffee delivery. He winced when a ray of sunlight hit him from the window, making him pause in his marathon. "Is it morning already?" "It would seem so," Maud replied, her tone even more dead than usual. Looking around at the faces of his fellow warriors, Spike knew that neither of them had gotten a wink of sleep, even though pillows and blankets had been set out in the room. The only ones to use them had been Sunset and the two Twilights, who had worked in shifts to assist Starlight's repair efforts. Starlight herself had refused to take a break and worked through the night. Trixie, in turn, had refused to leave her side. Right now, they were all in there, leaving Spike and the others to wait and worry some more. "Sunset!" Sunburst suddenly got up and went to the door where Sunset and the two Twilights had just stepped through. "Are you all right? You know your reservoir is still low." She smiled appreciatively at his worry. "I'm fine," she said, despite looking ready to keel over and sleep for a week straight. "But Abby..." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she simply buried her head in Sunburst's mane. Spike looked at Twilight, yet was unable to pose the question. "It was incredible," she said, tears standing in her eyes as well. "She was incredible. The Starlight, that is." "Yeah," Saitoy confirmed, wiping away at her own eyes. "With every startup command, there was a list of errors as long as my arm on the laptop screen. And Starlight would just go on, eliminating them one by one. Sometimes she'd solve a problem just for 3 more to show up, but she just kept going. Power, connections, mechanical faults, until all the readouts were back to normal. I've never seen anyone work like that for hours on end," Twilight Prime went on. "And Trixie, you should have seen her. Her magic was like a blur, executing every task Starlight set her to perfection. By the end, she was even spotting and fixing issues by herself the rest of us didn't even notice." Spike was desperately trying to ignore the visual cues he was seeing on their faces. "That's good, right? That means they fixed him, right?" The two Twilights looked at each other, sighing. "Come on." The trio led the group into Starlight's workshop. Mara stared silently through the window. Both Starlight and Trixie were sitting on their haunches in front of Opportunity, their ears flat against their skulls. They didn't rise as the others came in. Spike looked at Opportunity, and the console readout on the laptop nearby, which alleged that the rover was powered up and operational. And while scratched and dented in some places, his vital parts had been restored. A new arm had been fitted, the drive repaired, all the gaping holes closed up. That gave Spike some hope. "Hey, buddy. How are you doing?" Unlike what he had gotten used to, Oppie's camera eyes did not swivel to meet him, instead staring blankly into the distance. "Parse error. Command not recognized." Spike forced a laugh, walking up to the rover. "That's not really funny, you know. Come on, Opie, you recognize my voice, don't you?" He made a fist and bumped it into the robotic arm. It did not move in response. "Parse error. Command not recognized." Even his synthesized voice sounded hollower than usual, despite the enchanted bow tie having been reattached. The dragon looked over at Starlight, pleading with his eyes for her to tell him that it wasn't so. But what he saw shattered what optimism he'd managed to muster. Starlight's head was hung low, and she would not meet his eyes. By the movement of her shoulders and the small puddle in front of her, he could tell why.
It's not fair,
Trixie lamented, her head raised to the ceiling in an effort to hold back her own tears.
I never got to tell him. I'm so sorry about the last words I said to him. Now I can never.
Spike looked at Twilight, his own lower lip trembling and the tears falling unbidden.
No.
But her look, again, told him everything he needed to know. They hadn't brought them in here to celebrate Oppie's miraculous recovery. They'd brought them in to say goodbye. He could feel a hoof on his shoulder as Maud walked up and placed a rock on the rover's chassis.
For the road,
she said.
Wherever it is you're going.
Parse error. Command not recognized. Spike looked at his friend, wanting to say something, but his throat kept closing up. He took out a red ruby which he'd picked out of his hoard as a get-well present and placed it next to the rock. To receive 2 specimens at once, it was something that would always send Oppie into an excited blabbering. Now the rover didn't even react. Unable to stand it anymore, Spike shook his head, turned, and ran to hug Twilight, sobbing uncontrollably. Twilight had said her own goodbyes earlier, but as she draped a wing around the young dragon, her shoulders could be seen trembling from fresh sobs as well. One by one, they all followed suit and began to pay their respect to the machine that had so suddenly entered their lives and changed them forever. Cranky was next as he laid a hoof on him, looking at Starlight. "You did it, kid," he said, his voice cracking ever so slightly. "You went into danger to save her, and you did. I'm proud of you. You're off to your final adventure now." Sunburst and Sunset walked up together.
I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful. I would have liked to get to know you better,
the wizard said, laying a hoof on the chassis. Sunset laid her own on top of his.
You did plenty, Sunburst. Sleep now, little rover. We'll never forget you.
When Sidewise stepped up to the rover, she said,
I would have liked to meet those creators you always talked about. They sound like incredible people. Now I'll probably never know who they are. But I'm quite sure of one thing. They must be very proud of you.
Parse error. Command not recognized. With every repeat of the unfeeling and uncomprehending response, fresh sobs went through everyone assembled. Trixie forced herself forward and rested her forehead against Oppie's mast.
I'm sorry that we couldn't bring you home,
she whispered simply before stepping aside. Returning to Starlight's side, she rested a hoof uncertainly on her friend's shoulder in an attempt to give comfort. Starlight only stared down at the floor.
We're here,
Trixie said, the words barely audible. Starlight nodded and looked up, her eyes red and underlined with tear streaks running down her face. She took a few uncertain, tottering steps forward. She began, her voice cracking and choking.
I didn't think I'd be saying goodbye so soon. You came into my life out of nowhere, and even though it's been such a short time, I wish I could tell you how much you mean to me, but I tried my best. I'm sorry.
She looked up, her eyes glistening as she peered into the camera eyes, still hoping desperately to see some sign of consciousness within, and finding none.
Why didn't you just talk to me? We should have worked together. I would never blame you for what happened. I'd rather have suffered a couple more hours than to lose my friend. And now you're...
Her face locked in misery. She threw her hooves around Opportunity's mast and wept.
Abby! Please come back!
Her voice finally gave way to uncontrolled weeping, as everyone else drew near to their closest and let her express her grief. As everyone bowed their heads for their lost friend, nobody noticed the sparse lines appearing on the laptop screen. AOS DSN. New Hope Protocol initiated. Downloading. Perhaps thinking to give them more privacy, some of the ponies stepped back and began to quietly move towards the door. Starlight Glimmer continued to weep, and as she wept, a spark from her horn arced to Oppie's pancam, a small version of the interdimensional lightning bolt that had brought them together so many months ago. Download complete. Flash memory restored. Reinitializing systems. The others halted, gradually realizing that there was another sound in the room beneath Starlight's weeping. Spike felt Twilight's hoof nudge him, and he looked up. They were all staring at something. Small servos whirred as Oppie's eyes began to focus, looking down at the unicorn. The robotic arm began to move slowly, the unicorn's breath catching as she suddenly felt her embrace being returned. Starlight. Behind her, all the assembled friends were watching them with wide eyes, but Starlight only looked up at the robot's eyes.
Oppie,
she said, a lump in her throat.
You came back to me.
Opportunity nodded.
Opportunity promise. Opportunity always come back to Starlight. Starlight, safe?
She nodded, wiping away her tears.
Yeah, I'm fine. What about you?
Opportunity fine. Oppie!
The rover moved its camera eyes around the room frantically as he was caught up in a group hug by several relieved ponies, a dragon, and a donkey.
Friend Opportunity safe!
The voice boomed through the small room, the sheer air pressure almost knocking over the group.
Mars glad!
Oh! Yeah.
Starlight said to the startled rover, wiping the last of her tears from her face.
Another friend of yours came by.
Untangling himself from the massive limbs, Oppie drove towards the window where a smile could be seen behind the glowing red eyes.
Mars?
He looked outside, scanning the building-sized being from head to toe.
Mars smaller than Opportunity, remember?
The giant simply continued to smile as he reached a single finger through the window. An opportunity promptly moved his arm to put it on the giant digit as if reuniting with a dear old friend, which was, in a way, exactly what was happening here.
You know,
Sunset said,
far be it from me to question a miracle that's right in front of me, but I sure would like to know what happened.
Oh, right.
The rover moved excitedly over to the laptop.
Opportunity bring message from creators. Creators and sister save opportunity and send opportunity back.
Sister?
Starlight asked. The rover nodded and pulled up the file. Everyone winced as strange noises began to play. Opportunity stopped the playback.
Sorry,
he said.
Creators not have time to learn equestrian. Opportunity translate.
Allow me,
Trixie said, and lit her horn.
Uploading the file to the BSN, running the translation matrix, saving back to the computer, and done.
Thank you, Trixie,
Opportunity said, and received a smile in turn. Then the message began to play, this time in equestrian. A male voice said, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." As the ponies looked at each other in confusion, a shuffle and some static could be heard before a female voice continued,
Damn it, Tom! Why? Why? You know we don't have time to record over this!
The male voice came on again, a little sullen this time.
Hey, the first we saw of them was their royalty doing the chicken dance. I thought it would only be fair if we made an equally bad first impression.
The female grumbled for a bit, before clearing her throat and going on as if nothing had happened.
Greetings, Starlight Glimmer, Twilight Sparkle, or whoever gets this message. My name is Christine Summers from the planet Earth. If you're receiving this message, then it hopefully means our transmission went through, and Oppie should be back to his old self. As you've probably figured out by now, we're the ones who built Opportunity and sent it to our neighboring planet in the course of scientific study. Never in our wildest dreams did we imagine that he would be the one to bring us into contact with an alien civilization. We were at a loss of what had happened to him until we finally managed to establish contact last night. He managed to transmit everything he's seen and done over there, and let me tell you, we still can't believe some of the things we're seeing here. But one thing became clear to us very quickly. You're the ones to rescue him from the global dust storm on Mars, and for that we thank you on his behalf. That is why we knew, when we started receiving standby signals from the rover early this morning, it had to have been you who were trying to repair him. What you may or may not know is that Oppie has a faulty flash memory. Whenever he completely shuts down, that memory is lost. We were never able to correct this problem from home. Thankfully, he was able to transmit everything. His logs, his data, his memories, his very being, essentially, when we made contact. In turn, we were able to temporarily transfer all of his experiences into his sister, Serendipity. The effects were interesting, to say the least, but we knew immediately that we had to send him back, because looking at his photographs and memories, we knew you care about him as much as we do. I'm sorry that I have to cut this message short. The transmission window between our two worlds is closing soon, and our stars won't be in good alignment for communication for a while after that. With this message, we've included detailed calculations and diagrams of where our world is in relation to yours, instructions on how to fix Oppie's faulty memory module, and some medical text that will hopefully aid in Miss Glimmer's recovery. Opportunity knows how to get a message via Serendipity back to us. We would very much like to open a dialogue with your people. If nothing else, please let us know if Oppie made it back to you safely. This is Christine Summers from NASA JPL, speaking to you on behalf of the people of the planet Earth.
Christy was tapping her foot anxiously while she sat at her station and stared at the readouts, as if willing them to change. She would stay as long as the transmission window would remain open, even though her body and brain screamed out at her for sleep. She didn't even want to contemplate hearing nothing back and having to carry all that anxiousness until the window opened back up again. She could feel a hand touching hers and allowed their fingers to intertwine. She couldn't help but smile as she looked at Jack from the corner of her eye. It was a nice feeling, one she'd gone without for far too long. Incoming transmission! Everyone looked up as they heard Tom call out over the monitor while standing next to Serendipity in the Mars yard at JPL. Christy checked her own readouts.
Confirmed.
All of Mission Control got up as one person and crowded around Christie's station. The controllers that had been here from the start and worked through the night, as well as the backup crews that had streamed in throughout. From other monitors, teams from JAXA, ISRO, ESA, and CSNA watched. In the corner of the room, a small television set showed the live footage from CNN. The anchor and the two experts that had been talking were now silent as they looked at the wall behind them, showing the live stream from Mission Control in Houston, holding their breath along with the rest of the world. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, Mars Rover Opportunity attempting second contact with alien civilization.
Source confirmed as MERB via DSN.
Christy shifted nervously in her seat, fully aware of the fact that her next words would change the course of human history forever.
Message reads, MERB extended mission success. Starlight Glimmer safe. Opportunity safe. Greetings from Equestria. We'll send more during next transmission window. P.S. Who is Obi-Wan Kenobi?
A cry of joy went around the room, the likes of which hadn't been seen in Mission Control since the days of Apollo, as hugs, handshakes, and the clapping of shoulders ensued. The jubilation propagated over the screens and cameras of the teams of the other space agencies and over television stations across the globe. In a moment that would probably remain at the forefront of human consciousness for decades, realizing that they were not alone in the cosmos, people spontaneously went into the street to celebrate with their fellow man and, wherever it could be seen, pointing at a tiny red dot in the sky. In the Mars yard at JPL, Tom had grabbed Serendipity's robotic arm and was spinning her around in an impromptu victory dance. Christy laughed out heartily as she watched his antics on the screen, and all around her the celebration showed no sign of slowing down. She turned to Jack, and in a moment of complete spontaneity, grabbed his tie to pull her ex-husband into a kiss.